Hello everyone, and thank you for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we return to the grim future of the 41st millennia and round 3 of my local 40k league. A massive game as it marked my last opportunity to get on track for a winning record. So, let's see how it went down. First up, what was the opponent? The opponent was Custodes, an experienced tournament player. Nice guy, strong list. Lots of invuln saves, good armor saves, and the ability to dish out a lot of a kicking if things went wrong. What was the mission? Well, we rolled up, tear down their icons. And to be honest, I struggled with the opening phase of the game, which is pick secondaries, to choose something useful. My first choice was Promethean Creed. Thought that would be a fairly strong way of picking up some passive points, as it had been the case in some of the other games I've played. And that's when I started to run into a little bit of bother. I thought about taking banners, but thought I didn't really want to push for the centre, which also took away some of the psychic action-based secondaries. In the end, I thought, well, given you start in a table quarter, I could probably push north and east fairly effectively from my southwesterly starting quarter. So went with engage on all fronts. Despite the nerf to it, I then decided to go for what had been plan A when I originally created the army and selected Codex Warfare. So deployment was fairly cagey, trying to keep as much of my stuff concealed as possible to stop any attempts at blasting me off the board with gunfire, turn 1. And having got turn 1, this led to me really trying to stay concealed as much as I could, and a fairly cagey advance. A few shots into a sisters unit that was supporting the Custodes was about the lot. In response, again, there was a bit of a cagey advance from the Custodes, but one of my dreadnoughts was taken out of action. It was at this point really where I'm realising that engage on all fronts was a poor choice of secondary, because I'd missed the fact that you need unit strength 3 in order to score it, so I'm already behind the curve. Straight up on me not reading properly because I was being a proper plonker. Turn 2. So the Custodes had moved up into the centre, so I moved into position to maximise the number of shots. And I was able to kill a couple of units, and I also, purely for funsies really, called down an orbital bombardment to try and force my opponent to move off that objective. In return, all my assault bikes were taken out, and I was on the receiving end of a handful of long bomb charges. Unfortunately, this does seem to be a little bit of a running theme, where turn 2, a series of long charges, 9-10 inches. The charges is successful, and then my army starts to fall apart. I kind of keep playing the odds in this way, and it's definitely a learning point that it doesn't really work, particularly with the opportunity for rerolls and the like. So definitely something I need to bear in mind. It does turn out at this point I'd probably overextended a little bit rather than just castling up, so things were not looking good. So a typical turn 2 for the league. For turn 3, my Promethean Creed was picking up a sack full of points for me, so that went well. I managed to kill a Terminator that had come into play the previous turn, but wasn't as effective with my shooting as quite I'd hoped. And we were now getting into the mopping up stage of the game, and really able to, from about mid of turn 4 onwards, able to talk out where we got to in the game to reach the point. Final score was 100 points for the Custodes, 59 points for the Salamanders. So another fairly comprehensive loss where I very quickly fell behind the curve and started to struggle. But I think I can take away some good learning points. Certainly the discussion after the game with my opponent was really helpful, to really lean into his experience a little bit with the game and to think about some of the aspects of the game where I probably wasn't doing myself any favours. I've got a lot of Melter in my army and want to get that involved. What I tend to do, and have done across the league so far, is I've pushed forward perhaps that little bit too much in order to get the +2 damage, to really try and bring the pain home with the Melter. But I've also got a lot of missile launchers and the like floating around, so I've been staying in Devastator Doctrine. So perhaps actually thinking about making use of the Technical Doctrine and the Salamanders +1 to wound with Melters, so a 3 to a 2 might be, I say normally a 3 up, not to normally a 2 up, would be quite helpful, and to also reconsider how I use strategic reserves. It's not something I've really dived into. I've only ever really used deep strike as options in the past, not with the army I've got, because I don't have those deep strike options. But I think strategic reserves could be a way forward to try and maximise the potential of my firepower going forward. Next up, I'm up against Chaos Knight. Now, as is again a repeating theme of this league, I'm coming up against armies that I'm just not familiar with. I've not played Chaos Knights before. However, at least this time I've played Imperial Knight, so I've got some kind of clue as to what might be coming in my direction. And I've got a couple of ideas around what secondaries I want to pick and how I might want to play the game, depending on which mission gets rolled up. Now, I'm not saying by any means that I'm expecting to win the game. I know that I'm up against a tough list and a very good opponent, so it's going to be a challenging game. Hopefully it will also be a fun game. My objective really for game 4, realistically I can't expect to win, but what I hope to do is to actually demonstrate a little bit of progress, which isn't something I've really managed so far. I know that there's obviously the adage of everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Hopefully I don't get punched in the face too hard. And the plan kind of comes together. It's always said that you learn more from your defeats than from your victories. So, given my current run of games, then perhaps I should be on the cusp of becoming absolutely unbeatable. Until next time, this is Return to the Old World. Thank you very much for listening. The quest for success continues.